Okay, guys, I think we'll get started now. We've hit 3:30, so hopefully we've got everyone online. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Wushka training session. My name is Tenneille Langton. I've been working with Wushka for the last several years, and it is really such a fantastic tool. And I'm so excited that so many teachers and schools are getting to experience and use Wushka for the first time now and take advantage of the free access. So as you can see on the screen at the moment, I've just got some brief housekeeping items. We do record each of our training sessions and they'll be available for distribution at the end of the session. Please just email us at the support email address on screen if you'd like a copy of that. You'll notice that I have muted the audio of all participants today, just to make sure we get a really good audio quality for everyone. And we'll just ask that you keep your videos off as well, if that's okay, just a little bit less distraction for everybody. We will be taking questions via the chat function of your Zoom if you haven't found it along the bottom menu. My colleague Kira Lee will be joining us there and responding to your questions in the chat. We will stay in there at the end of the session for another 10 or 15 minutes for a bit more Q&A. So if we don't get to you during the session, please feel free to stay on and continue in the chat. You can also save the chat questions to a file on your computer, and I will show you how to do that on the next slide. You might find there's some questions that you have come up that are really specific to your school or the way that you'd like to use Wushka for your class. These sort of questions are usually best directed to your local Wushka person, a support person. And if you email us, again, we'll be able to get you in touch with your local support person and they'll be able to do a more in-depth or one-on-one session with you. Okay, so I'll just move on to the next slide so you can see how to save the chat if you would like to. So just the three little dots beside the chat box at the end of the session, and that will save the transcript of the chat for you. Okay, I'm going to jump into Wushka now, so just bear with me while I swap screens and we'll get into the training. Okay, hopefully now on screen you can see a Wushka login screen. Just for the purposes of training, you might notice that I am using the wushka.co.nz site. We do have a separate site for New Zealand, and our Australian site is www.wushka.com.au. Hopefully your school is registered and you've received your activation email, and that will prompt you with your login details and a password that you've created. So once you've logged in, it'll bring you straight through here into the teacher dashboard as a starting point. Now, before I drill down into the nitty-gritty and the how-tos, the first thing I'd like to show you is our reading boxes, so our Wushka reading library. That's where all the titles are held, and I'll just give you a general introduction in that area. So here you can see our reading boxes all set up by colour. Now, Wushka is a cloud-based reading program, and a cloud-based means that it's accessible from any browser to log in. It's not an app, it doesn't need to be downloaded or updated at any time. Every time you log into Wushka, you are seeing the most up-to-date version that we have available. It can be used on PCs, tablets, iPads, or any device with a browser. But just to let you know, we do recommend Google Chrome as the best browser to experience full functionality of Wushka. But whatever browser your students have available will be suitable. There's 650 titles in Wushka, so a really good selection of books for your students. And they're organised by these coloured boxes based on the ready-to-read colour wheel. We do have correlation charts available to align to other well-used and known brands of readers that you might have already been using in your classroom previously, and I will show you where to find them shortly. So without too much more ado, we'll jump into the dashboard, and I'd like to show you how to get started. You can see here this first screen is lots of lovely coloured tiles, and these will give you access into all the key parts of Wushka. And I'm going to start here in the green tile Manage Class list. When you log into Wushka for the first time, you will find that your class, your students are already set up for you with some default settings. So you'll get all your students listed here and the settings across the horizontal. I just want to make note that anything with a blue dotted underline is a field that you can change for your student. So if we've made a spelling mistake when we set up one of your students, just feel free to click on the field and make the changes that you need to, and select the red tick box to confirm those changes. You might notice that the only thing that isn't underlined along here is the username. You cannot change the username, it's system generated, but everything else you can adjust. We've found that a lot of our teachers, the first thing that they would like to do is get rid of the temporary password that is set in place when we first create your students, and add a password either for individual students or for the whole class. The whole class password seems to me the most popular choice, so I'll show you how to set that now. Over here in the top right, you'll see a grey Manage Class button. If you click on that, you'll find that this opens up a menu where you can change quite a few settings at a class level. But for now, let's start with that Set Class Password. Once I open that, I can just type in a new password, set, and you can see here it's immediately updated all of my students with the password Wushka. That's the first port of call when you're coming in to set your students up. Moving across, I would like to bring your attention to the reading level. So this is your students' independent reading level, not their guided or instructional reading, their independent or fluent reading level, because they'll have access to this level all of the time. So if you click on the field, you'll get the drop-down box appear where you can set your students' independent reading level. So I'll set Abbey at the yellow level and click the box to confirm that selection. These obviously can be changed at any time as your students move through the levels. You would just come back into your class list and adjust as required. Moving across to the level access, this is another really important setting that we'd like you to set for your students. This basically says to your students, this is what you can see when you log in. It's the same essentially as standing in front of a book box and saying you can choose from this box only, or you can choose from this box and also that box beside it. So we could give your students access to reading group only, and I will go into reading groups shortly. Reading level only, so in this case if I selected that, Abbey would only have access to the yellow level. Reading level and one above, one below, etc, etc. The most popular selection from this menu is the reading level and one below, or all levels below, where one level below seems to be the most appropriate to ensure that your students don't get overwhelmed with a very large selection of books that they could go through in a very short time. So we like to keep those selections available to you. So those first three settings, the password, the reading level and the level access, are what you need to set before you send your username and password to the students, because essentially that controls how they access, what they can access and what they can see. I'd like to move across now to the reading group and the reading group permissions. Now it's not essential that you use reading groups as part of your Wushka subscription, but lots of schools are using this either for home reading or to set up guided and instructional reading groups on a digital platform. So again, if I just click on the drop down, you can see I've created several groups here already: bananas, grapes, apples, oranges and pears, and I can select each student and put them into the group that I want them to be part of. You can also create new reading groups from this screen. Back here into the Manage Class button that you'll remember that I opened before, we have on the orange line an option to create a reading group. So I can just come in here, type in the name of my new reading group, create the group, and it becomes available on the drop down box for me to select and put my student into the box, into that group. Sorry. If you were using your Wushka reading groups for guided and instructional reading, maybe you're doing sessions like we are with Zoom now, and you don't want your students to access particular books that you've allocated for your group reading. You can use the reading group permission setting to restrict access to the reading group titles by selecting on or off school or home. Now in the current context, we probably won't be using the school and the home options because that does change access via hours. So in this case, if I want Abbey to access all the books in the reading group Grapes all of the time, I would leave that setting turned on. If I only wanted Abbey to access the books when her guided reading session comes up, I would leave that setting off until it was needed, and I would log in before the session and turn the reading group permission back on again. I hope that makes sense for everyone. If you'd like a little bit more information about using the reading groups for those two different purposes, or even another purpose that I haven't mentioned, please feel free to email us and we can organise a one-on-one Q&A or some training around using the reading groups for both home reading and instructional reading. Moving across, we have the narration setting. Each of the titles in Wushka can be narrated, and it's up to the teacher to decide whether they wish their students to have that setting turned on or off. Just because the setting is turned on doesn't mean that the student will automatically have the book narrated. They do have to press play in order to start the narration. So they can choose not to have it narrated even if they're allowed to. And finally, moving across to the Comprehension Quiz settings. Every title in the Wushka library has a 4 to 5 question multiple choice comprehension quiz at the end of the read. And it is based on Bloom's taxonomy of learning, checking for literal, inferential and evaluative understanding of the read. And the teacher drives whether these are compulsory, optional, or the students don't have to complete these at all. So I hope all those settings make sense for everybody. And I'm going to move now along the bottom menu to reading groups. You'll notice that the horizontal menu along the bottom here has access to some of the more often used parts of Wushka, just as a bit of a shortcut rather than going back into the original dashboard. So I'm going to move across to reading groups. Now you'll see here on my right-hand side are the groups that I created for my class. So the bananas, grapes, apples, oranges, pears, and the watermelons group. In this case, I have one student in the bananas group, Charlotte Clark, and I've got some readers here for her. But I'd like to show you how you allocate readers to a group to begin with. So here I've got the group apples, and in the apples group is Billy Brown over here on the right. Now, if I would like to allocate readers to the apples group, I just come over here to the left. I select the level of the books that I'd like to choose from. And to allocate a book to the group, I just need to click on the plus button on the top left, and you'll see that move over to the group readers. I can do that with as many readers as I need to. If you'd like to have a really quick overview of the book before you allocate it to your students, you can click on the magnifying glass and it'll open up the school reader detail. You can also follow over to the reading box for even further information and to see the supporting materials. But for now, we'll just close that just so you know where to find that little overview. And I would go through and toggle through my groups and do the reader allocation in exactly the same way for each group. You'll notice here I've got a book that has a little yellow star. Sorry, I think I just allocated it. I'm just going to go back so you can see it over this side. Here in Let's Go Exploring, there's a little yellow star to the top of the book. That means that I have bookmarked that book earlier to remind myself that I wanted to allocate it to the group. So that's just a little visual reminder, and I'll go into the bookmarks a little bit more shortly. I hope that covers how to allocate books. It's fairly straightforward, just the plus button, and they'll move over to the groups that you want to allocate to. Going along the bottom, I'm going to move over to the class statistics now. Wushka is a really fantastic tool for collecting real reading data. So we know with home readers, it's very difficult to really just determine what your students have done when they're at home. We're really relying on parents to guide them and make sure that they're completing the books that we've allocated to them. But here within Wushka, the system is actually collecting that data every time the student logs in and starts reading. So this screen is a class overview, and you can toggle between school hours, home hours, but in this case, I'm just going to leave it as both because we can't really be sure what time exactly our students will be doing reading. We hope that it's at a good time of day where they're able to concentrate really well, and we don't advocate students completing their reading late at night on a device. But we will be able to, I'll show you where you can see what time your students are reading shortly. So here we can see all our students' average readers completed, average time they're spending readers per week, and their average quiz results. To give you an example, Billy Brown has read 3 readers. He's taking 1.3 minutes per reader on average, averaging 3 readers per week and getting a good 87% as an average quiz result. That's really excellent. That would indicate to me as a teacher that Billy is going really well through his levels. He's reading at a good speed. He's also getting a really good level of comprehension. There might be time to move Billy up a level after we did some reading assessment. As a comparison, Charlotte has read 5 readers. She's only taking 11 seconds per reader, an average 5 readers a week, but she's only getting a 37% average quiz result. Now that is a really good indication that we might need to review Charlotte's settings and permissions. It could indicate that she's skimming her books and not reading in depth, which is a great conversation we could have with her supporting adult about her reading. It could be that Charlotte's reading level has been set too high and she's not getting the comprehension, and she's skimming through the books because they're just too hard, and then she's guessing the answers. You would use your teacher discretion and the knowledge that you already have of your students to make some decisions, but this is a good way to get a nice overview of the class. I'm going to move over to the student statistics tab, because this drills down into the reading data for each individual student. And this is where you're going to start getting a very clear picture of your students' reading and comprehension. And this will be able to inform you about the kind of readers you allocate, strategies they may need to continue working on, and levels and permissions that may need adjusting. So in this case, again, we could toggle between school and home up here in the left, but I'm just going to leave it on both for now. And we've got Abbey Anderson. Now, she didn't do any reading last week. Maybe it was school holidays last week, but today she has done 4 readers. Great reading. If we click on the More button, it will open up some more details about the reading that Abbey has been doing. So we can see the titles of the readers that she's read, how long she's read for, the time that she has read, and the date. Now, please forgive the time being ahead of the time we are now, because this is the New Zealand site and it is tracking in the New Zealand hours. So we're not time traveling or anything, we're just in New Zealand time. So we can really have a look at the time our students are doing their reading to make sure that they're not doing that late night reading that we would discourage. Scrolling down, we can see a graphical representation of some reading data. This graph here will tell us whether they are reading new titles or rereading books they've already read, how far through their level they've read, so read books versus unread, whether they're choosing fiction or non-fiction, which is really nice to inform about the kind of books that you might want to allocate or give them access to. Some students will avoid non-fiction titles because the vocabulary is a little harder, they might not be as familiar. So it's really nice to be able to make those decisions based on real information about what your students like to read or what they might be struggling with. And further over, we have the narration. So even if your students have access to the narration, this will determine whether they are actually turning it on or off, which is, again, a really nice way to recognise where you might need to adjust. Some students will turn the narration on at every opportunity, and some students will not, and you may need to turn the narration permissions off for some students when you recognise that. One more scroll down brings us to a graph of their quiz results. And as we click on each data point, again, it gives us an open more detail about the quiz. So we can identify the types of questions that they might be consistently struggling with, and that will assist us in planning some of our comprehension strategies that we need our students to work on. And we can see a really nice graphical representation of how well they're doing. We want to see lots of green here and not too much red. We can generate a PDF report from this screen as well, which is a snapshot in time, really nice to keep that record of where your student is today, and then have that comparison to this time next month and in going forward. So I hope that's an okay overview of the statistics. It does paint a really clear picture of your students' reading once they do start logging in and the data starts to get collected. So let's move over further to the reading boxes where we began, because I'd like to show you the readers and a couple of little tools here that will be of assistance. So as I mentioned before, all our readers are set up into their coloured boxes, and you can open the box with the plus and have a look at the titles in each level. A quick tool that I want to introduce you to that I hope will assist you in making your reader selections very efficient and targeted is the filter button up here on the top right. When I click on the filter button, it will open up to our filter options, which include themes, comprehension strategies, whether we can look at fiction or non-fiction, text types, and even page numbers. And this is beautiful. You can really try and tie all your reader selections into particular things that you're working on or working towards. You may be doing an inquiry unit on animals, birds, and insects, for example, and you can filter your books by that theme. And it will only bring you up results for readers that have a common theme of animals, birds, and insects. So even if you've got students spread over 6 different reading levels, you can select readers for them that have a common theme. Same goes for things like a comprehension strategy. You might be finding that your students need to work on finding the main idea, and you can select that strategy and filter the books, and it will bring you up the suggested books to assist with learning that strategy. So that's a great little tool, and I hope you can make use of that one. But let's have a look at a book. Okay, so when you open the book from a teacher view, you get quite a lot of data and information about the book. Down here we have book metadata. Themes, topics, strategies, skills, word counts, and high frequency words you can see down the side here. We get a description and some really good school reader details, so phonics focuses, etc. Also a little suggested activity to do after the reader. And moving down, we have the support materials available for the reader. Now, every single book does have these support materials available. We have the Black Line Master, a lesson plan, a printable reader, a wordless reader, and then another activity, and these change depending on the reader. We do have readers that have running records available, and I'll show you where to find which titles have those that assessment available when we go into the helpful resources. We do get asked if students can see the Black Line Masters when they log in. The answer is no, they can't, but we know lots of schools are now using tools such as Shobi or Kami, which is an extension on Google Chrome, where you can send the PDF to your student and they can do the markup or fill it in and send it back to you without having to print that. Your school will probably have a preferred tool for doing that, which you can use. So let's have a quick look at the actual read. So when we open the book, you'll notice the page is quite clean. There's very little distraction. It's very plain, and that's done purposely. A lot of teachers say they love the fact that there's no distraction in Wushka. And to get started with reading, it's just the left to right arrows to turn the pages. Now, if your student was to turn the narration on, they would just need to press the play button in the top right here, and the narration would start. I'm not going to turn it on now because the audio does not come through very well with the computer. But what I do want to note is that the narration speed matches the student's expected fluency speed. It's not the same as a supporting adult reading the story as a storybook. It's quite slow in the early and the emergent levels so that the student can recognise the word as it's said. The word also gets highlighted in blue as the narrator speaks the word, again to assist in word recognition. And as we move up the levels, the narration becomes faster and more fluent, and the highlighting moves out to a sentence level and then to a paragraph level in the upper readers. So clicking through the book, hopefully your students do a little bit more in-depth reading than I just did. And once we get to the end of the book, it's just the X to exit. And this is when their comprehension quiz option will pop up. So it's asking me if I'd like to complete the quiz for the reader. I'll select yes, so that we can have a look at what the quiz looks like. Let's get started. So we'll run through these multiple choice questions. It's a really easy click and next. Most of you will be thinking, is there narration on the quiz questions? No, there is not. We hope that in the early and the emergent reading levels, where the students may not be able to independently read the questions, that their supporting adult or older sibling, whoever's reading with them, will be there beside them to assist them to navigate the questions and read with them. We hope that that's the case because Wushka is meant to replicate the home reading that you do with a book in your hand. We hope that that's happening with a supporting person with them. So I'm just going to click through the questions. And once we finish the quiz, we get our quiz results. And that's the end. We've finished the quiz. Now there's no fireworks, there's no reward charts, there's no levels to complete, and there's no restrictions in terms of their results. They can go back and reread the reader and attempt the quiz again, and they can do that as many times as they like. But even if they get 0 in the quiz, it won't restrict them from moving on to another book if they want to read something different. I hope that makes sense. I just want to quickly show you how you can bookmark a book so that you can find it easily again later. Just underneath here in the original reader section, we just click on a bookmark. It'll come up with the yellow tag and it'll send it over to your bookmarks page. And you can see here a few books that I have already bookmarked. I'm going back to the reading boxes because I'd like to show you a reader at the upper levels. Obviously, Wushka is fantastic for learning to read, but what we also encourage schools to do is consider using Wushka for reading to learn. So if I move up into the 31++, we're looking at some chapter books here. And I'd like to show you the difference in the supporting materials of the upper level books. So you can here get the same detail and the same information that you do in the lower levels, but the difference is in the supporting materials. And I'm going to open this PDF so you can see what I'm talking about. So here for this particular reader, we've got a show what you know discussion card with quite a few high level activities for students to complete. We also have some work together and some team up activities, which would be perfect for online collaboration if you're using a Google Classroom tool or an online digital collaboration platform like Zoom. You could allocate students to do activities together over an online platform, or even allocate them to do individually. And it's a really good springboard to further learning. So it's not just learning to read, we really are catering for all readers, learn to read or reading to learn. So I hope that assists some of your teachers who are going to be using Wushka in the upper levels in stage 2 and stage 3. Okay, sorry, I just want to quickly show you reader records. I won't spend too much time here. Just a really quick overview for each student of the readers that they've read, the level, the date, the time spent reading, fiction and narrated. So that's a really nice quick overview that you can do in the reading records. I'm going to take you back to the original dashboard now with all the coloured tiles and show you some helpful resources that you can refer to after this training is finished and when you need them in the future. So here we have resources for schools and resources to send home. Our program coordinator setup guide is for the program coordinator at your school who will have originally set up the Wushka system for you. We also have a teacher user setup guide. So if you get lost at any stage, this goes over a few of the things that I've shown you today. We have the reading level correlation chart, and we have some support materials for reading assessment. I'm going to open the support materials because you may remember I mentioned about running records for readers. And this document will outline for you which of our readers you can use for assessment. So scrolling down, at each level, these are the readers that have a running record sheet attached that you can use if you are going to do online reading assessment with your students. We've got a parent leaflet. So if you're sending home some information about Wushka to your parents ready for term 2, you can use the leaflet. We have some social media items that your school can use as well. So I hope that covers all the essentials there. I'm just going to do a quick recap and make sure I haven't missed anything really crucial, and then I'm going to log in as a student so you can see exactly what your students are going to see when they log in. So we started over here on our dashboard and we started setting up our parameters for our students under Manage Class List. I think I did open the Manage Class button to show you where you could set a class password. You can also set a few other things at a class level if you need to. The reading level, the narration settings, quiz settings, and class permissions can all be done as a single click from there. You can also generate your student logins from here, and you can use a digital snipping tool to isolate each student and send that out with your parent information if you need to. I showed you how to change all of the settings for each student, including setting their password, their reading level, their level access, how to place them in a reading group, how to turn on their reading group permissions, and how to allow their narration and their quiz permissions as well. Moving across, we covered how to allocate readers to each reading group. What I didn't show you is that at the end of the week, if you've allocated quite a few readers to a group, you've got access to a little toolkit over here on the right. And rather than removing the readers one by one, you can actually archive all books from here, and it'll send them back over to the reading library ready to start again fresh for the week. You'll notice there's a little folder icon in this reader. That's just a little prompt to remind you that you have already allocated this reader previously to the students. So it's just a reminder for you in case you had forgotten that you'd used it previously. You can allocate a reader as many times as you want to, as many students as you like. It's just a nice little visual. We went through the class statistics as an overview of what your students are doing. And then we looked at the more in-depth student statistics where you can see more reading data for each student. We had a look at the reading boxes, how to view each book, how to filter the titles when you're wanting to focus on something specific, and how to access all the supporting materials for each reader. We had a brief look at reader records, and we had a look at the bookmarks page. This is where you can find the books that you've bookmarked to remind yourself what you were going to use. And you can just remove those by clicking on them. It's really easy. Okay, I'm going to jump in and log in as a student now so we can see what they see. Let's log in as Abbey. Okay, so you'll notice the first thing at the moment at the top of the page is the reading group. Now Abbey is in the Grapes group and I've allocated 3 readers to their group. I've set Abbey's reading group permissions to on, which is why she can see these reading group titles here. If I had set Abbey's reading group permission to off, she would only be able to see the levels access that I've given her. So as the students log in, they see their reading group titles and below the levels that you've given them access to. They can explore the boxes the same way as we can from the teacher view, but without the filter tool. They can select books to read from here. I'll open up a book so we can have a look. You'll note here on the book, My Dad Makes Me Laugh, there's a little grey triangle at the top that says, I've read it. That's just a reminder to the student or to their supporting person that they have already read that book and prompt to maybe choose another. And also down here in the bottom corner, it gives an indication of how many times that book has been read. So again, just a nice reminder to a supporting person that if they've found that the student has read that book 10 times, they can gently encourage them to try a new book. When the student opens up the book, they obviously don't get all the metadata that the teacher view has. They get a nice succinct description, a suggestion of something to do once they've completed the reader, which I really like because it also is a really good suggestion for a parent or a supporting person to get them to have their student do a next activity after the read. It's not easy always to think of something to ask your students to do after they finish reading as a parent, so this is a nice suggestion. And we also have some suggested readers. If they enjoyed this book, they might enjoy reading some more. I won't do the read again or the quiz because it looks exactly the same as the teacher view, which we've already done. The student can save this book to their favourites here by clicking on the favourite button. And similarly to a teacher bookmarking, it will send it over to their favourites page where they can access it again. Moving along the bottom menu here, I'm going to go to the student's My page. They do have access to all their own reading statistics and data. So their parent or supporting person and themselves can see exactly what the teacher can see. Obviously, they can only see their own data and nobody else's. They can't see any students in their reading group, only their individual data. So this parent can have a look along and see what their student is doing and are aware of their quiz results as well. Further along, the student can access a more in-depth look at their online quizzes. Some students find this is a really good motivator because they might not be happy with the quiz results they got for, say, the book I Can See, and that might prompt them to go back and reread that book and attempt the quiz again. So that's pretty much it for the student view. I think we've covered everything we need to do in the training component now. So I'm going to switch back over my screen to my PowerPoint and jump into the chat to answer some questions there. So just bear with me while I swap screens again, everyone. I won't be a moment. Okay, so thank you so much for being here today for the training. I hope that's been helpful to everybody. And if you do need more support, please feel free, email us support@wushka.com.au and we'll be happy to assist with your individual questions. We can provide more individual training for yourself or your school when you need it. MTA are also offering ST Math, which I wanted to mention today. We have an online digital math program and it is free as well until the 30th of June 2020. If you jump over to our website, www.teaching.com.au, it's on our landing page and you can have a look there for it and contact us. Also, if you've got colleagues who couldn't make it to training today, we are running further sessions Wednesday and Thursday at both 12:30 and 3:30. So I encourage you to let them know about those sessions so that they can register and get the training that they might need. So thank you so much, everybody, and feel free to keep throwing questions at us. Okay, I'm just going to do a quick read back of the chat so I can see if there's anything that I can jump in on. I can see Kiralee is doing an amazing job. There's not very much that Kiralee doesn't know about Wushka, so I trust that she's been answering all your questions really well. And you're very welcome to everyone who's said thank you. It's my pleasure to help everyone get up and running with Wushka. I'm so glad to hear that, Erin. I'm glad you're feeling a bit more confident. I hope you enjoy using Wushka. Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks, Cheryl. Jay Griffith, one of the programs that we've heard of teachers using is Shobi. I'll try and type that in here for everyone to see. The other one I came across was called Kami, and that was in Google Chrome or Google Classrooms. We have heard of a few others. Kiralee, if you want to jump in, if you remember the name of them, there's been so many mentioned in the last couple of weeks. Thanks, Sadie. So we are going to leave the group chat open for another, say, 10 minutes. So please feel free to keep shooting through your questions. I'm going to turn my video off now, but I'll still be in the chat to help with any more questions that you need. Thanks. Guys, Joe just asked if you can add new students to a class. Sorry, I didn't show that. So I'm just going to share the Wushka screen and just quickly show you what that looks like. Just bear with me while I log back in. Once you go to your manage class, sorry, bear with me. Better. Over to the right-hand side, you'll just see the add new student box, and it's really easy. You just need to type in the new student, add, and they'll be immediately added over here to your student list so you can start setting them up with all their permissions. I hope that helps.